Nestled amidst the towering Himalayas, Kashmir, once celebrated as paradise on earth, today bears the deep wounds of a conflict that has raged for decades. The pristine beauty of its snow-capped peaks and verdant valleys stands in stark contrast to the brutal reality endured by its people. For years, the region has been caught in the throes of a silent war, a struggle for self-determination met with relentless force by the Indian state. This is the story of Kashmir, a land scarred by violence where human rights are trampled upon and justice remains elusive. To understand the plight of Kashmir, one must delve into the tumultuous history that has shaped its destiny. This region, often described as paradise on earth, has been a focal point of conflict and strife for decades. The seeds of conflict were sown in 1947 with the partition of British India. This monumental event led to the creation of two separate nations, India and Pakistan, and set the stage for future discord. As India and Pakistan emerged as independent nations, the fate of the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir hung precariously in the balance. The decision of its ruler would determine the future of millions. The predominantly Muslim population's desire to join Pakistan was met with resistance from the Hindu ruler, Maharaja Hari Singh, leading to the First Indo-Pakistani War of 1947. This conflict marked the beginning of a long and bloody struggle. The war ended with a ceasefire line, dividing Kashmir between the two nations, a division that persists to this day. This line, known as the Line of Control, remains one of the most heavily militarized borders in the world. However, the aspiration for self-determination remained strong among Kashmiris, igniting an armed insurgency in 1989. This insurgency was fueled by years of political disenfranchisement and economic neglect. This marked a turning point, ushering in an era of militarization and widespread human rights violations. The daily lives of Kashmiris were disrupted and the region became synonymous with conflict. The Indian government responded with an iron fist, deploying hundreds of thousands of troops to quell the uprising. This heavy-handed approach has led to a cycle of violence and repression that continues to this day. The presence of such a large military force operating under the draconian Armed Forces Special Powers Act, or AFSPA, has created a climate of fear and impunity. The sheer number of troops deployed in civilian areas is staggering, and their actions are often unchecked. The AFSPA granting sweeping powers to the armed forces has been widely criticized by human rights organizations for fostering a culture of extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, torture, and sexual violence. These powers allow soldiers to act with near-total impunity, often leading to severe human rights abuses. Thousands of Kashmiris have been subjected to enforced disappearances, their families left in a perpetual state of anguish and uncertainty. The pain of not knowing the fate of their loved ones haunts these families every day. Torture in custody is rampant, with victims recounting horrific tales of electrocution, waterboarding, and sexual assault. These brutal methods are used to instill fear and suppress dissent. The use of pellet guns, a supposedly non-lethal weapon, has left hundreds, including children, permanently blinded, exposing the brutal reality of the Indian state's response. The injuries caused by these weapons are often life-altering and devastating.
The international community has documented these atrocities extensively. Reports and documentaries have highlighted the severe human rights violations occurring in Kashmir. Yet accountability remains a distant dream for the victims and their families. Despite the overwhelming evidence, justice is rarely served. The AFSPA essentially shields perpetrators from prosecution, creating an environment where human rights violations can occur with impunity. This legal shield has been a major obstacle in the path to justice for countless victims.
The systemic nature of these atrocities is best exemplified by chilling incidents like the Pathribal fake encounter of 2000 and the Kunan-Poshpora mass rape of 1991. In Pathribal, 5 innocent civilians were killed by the Indian Army and falsely labeled as militants responsible for a massacre. Despite DNA evidence proving their innocence, no one has been held accountable.
The Kunan-Poshpora incident stands as a grim testament to the use of sexual violence as a weapon of war. On the night of February 23, 1991, soldiers of the Indian Army are alleged to have gang-raped at least 23 women in the villages of Kunan and Poshpora. Despite overwhelming evidence and testimonies, justice remains elusive, highlighting the deep-rooted impunity enjoyed by the Indian forces.
The suppression of dissent is another grim aspect of the conflict.
The Indian government has repeatedly imposed communication blackouts, cutting off internet and mobile services for months on end.
These blackouts, the longest ever imposed in a democracy, cripple everyday life, disrupt businesses, and hinder access to essential services like healthcare.
Journalists and human rights defenders face intimidation, harassment, and arbitrary arrests for daring to speak truth to power.
Farhad Shah, the editor of the Kashmir Wala, and Sajjad Gul, a freelance journalist, are just 2 recent examples of this crackdown on press freedom. Scars that run deeper than flesh. The human cost of oppression, the human cost of this protracted conflict is, well, immeasurable. Living under constant military presence and surveillance has created a climate of fear and paranoia, leaving lasting psychological scars on the Kashmiri psyche. The World Health Organization estimates that 1 in 5 adults in Kashmir suffers from some form of mental health issue, with PTSD and depression alarmingly prevalent. Children grow up witnessing violence, their education disrupted, and their futures shrouded in uncertainty. The unseen wounds of trauma and loss run deep within Kashmiri society, a silent epidemic that demands attention. The world's deafening silence, a legacy of inaction. The international community's response to the plight of the Kashmiri people has been woefully inadequate. While the UN has issued numerous resolutions on Kashmir, calling for a plebiscite to determine its future, these resolutions have been largely ignored by India. The global powers, often driven by strategic interests, have failed to exert meaningful pressure on India to address its human rights record in Kashmir. This silence only emboldens the Indian state, allowing it to continue its policies of oppression with impunity.
The time for silence is over. The international community must act decisively to address the human rights crisis in Kashmir.
Beyond the headlines, Kashmir's cry for justice. The narrative of Kashmir is often lost in the cacophony of global news, its people reduced to mere statistics. But behind these numbers are real lives shattered, dreams extinguished, and a yearning for justice that burns bright. The world must look beyond the headlines, acknowledge the suffering of the Kashmiri people, and demand accountability for the crimes perpetrated against them. A call to action: break the silence, demand justice. The voices of the oppressed in Kashmir have been silenced for too long. It's time to amplify their cries for justice and bring global attention to their plight. The time for silence is over. We must stand together in solidarity and raise our voices against the ongoing human rights abuses. The international community must act decisively to address the human rights crisis in Kashmir. Diplomatic efforts and international pressure are crucial in bringing about meaningful change. This requires a multi-pronged approach. Independent investigations. Thorough and unbiased investigations are essential to uncover the truth and ensure accountability. The UN must establish an independent commission of inquiry to investigate all allegations of human rights violations and hold perpetrators accountable. Repeal draconian laws and the oppressive legal framework must be dismantled. The Indian government must repeal the AFSPA and other repressive laws that provide legal cover for human rights abuses. Ensure justice and accountability. Justice must be served for the victims. establish a mechanism for addressing past atrocities, including enforced disappearances and sexual violence, and provide reparations to victims and their families. International pressure, global solidarity is key. The international community, including the United States and the European Union, must exert diplomatic pressure on India to end its human rights violations and engage in meaningful dialogue with Kashmiri representatives. Only through collective action can we hope to see progress. The people of Kashmir deserve to live in peace and dignity, free from fear and oppression. Their dreams and aspirations are no different from ours. Their struggle for justice is a struggle for humanity itself. We must recognize their fight as our own. Let us not be complicit in their suffering by remaining silent. Our silence only perpetuates their pain. Let us raise our voices and demand an end to the injustice in Kashmir. Together we can make a difference and bring hope to those who have been silenced for too long.